Welcome to Fun and Fundraising, everybody, the podcast where we talk with people behind the top nonprofit galas and signature fundraisers to showcase how they positively transform their communities. I am your host, Rob Giardinelli, and today I'm excited to have Megan Campuzano on as a guest. Megan is the Senior Director of Annual Giving for the Dell Children's Foundation. They recently hosted a gala with the event theme called Becoming, and that event raised over $3 million for the organization. And Megan and the entire Dell Children's team is such a wonderful wealth of knowledge how to put on a successful event. And one of the things we're going to talk about today is we're going to talk about being able to do more and raise more with less. And it kind of turns the narrative that you need to have more to raise more at an event. And I can't think of anyone better to talk about that than Megan and the folks at the Dell Children's. Megan, thank you. Congratulations on a great year this year, and welcome.
Thank you so much, Rob. It was such a pleasure to be a part of the event this past year, and really, really pleased to join you today. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So before we dive into the event, I think it's always important for people to understand what your organization is about. So can you tell me a little bit about the mission of the Dell Children's Foundation?
Absolutely. So Dell Children's Foundation, of course, has a primary mission of raising as much funds as possible and to really uplift and support the mission of Dell Children's Medical Center, which is to provide world-class care to every child who comes through our doors, regardless of their family's ability to pay or their diagnosis.
That's amazing. And it's interesting because it really is the vision of Michael Dell that kind of really created Austin kind of being really a source of Austin being a world-class medical facility. And it really all began because I know that there's the medical school campus, but it really all began with the Dell Children's Medical Center. And it's just amazing to see how that has grown and how it really has transformed and shaped the Austin community into really a world-class city in a number of ways, medical care being one of them.
Absolutely, you're right. You think back to the years where it was just a pediatric unit of Brackenridge Hospital downtown. And the Austin community really came together and decided that this city deserved and needed its own freestanding children's hospital. And to look at, where we've come from and where we are today is pretty incredible. And Austin deserves that. We deserve to have a place where families can come no matter what. And we don't want to see families leaving to go to places like Dallas or Houston or even having to leave the state of Texas to get the care that they need. They should be able to get it right here. So we're proud to work on that mission every day.
That's incredible. And, like I said, it's wonderful that Michael really had the vision and the insight, 15, 20 years ago to create the center, and really in anticipation of all just the rapid growth that Austin's having, and to have this here and to have it so firmly and well established really makes it's one of the main reasons I think the medical center is what draws families into Austin.
I think so too. And I actually saw a headline recently. I think we've been the 11th largest metropolitan area here in Austin for several years now. And I did see a headline just this week. I think we popped up number 10. So that, the growth continues and people are pouring in, and we need to be able to meet the demands of our community.
Absolutely. So, tell me a little bit about how you personally became involved with Dell Children and what drew you to, be a part of and work with this organization.
Sure. So I have had the pleasure of a wonderful, pediatric healthcare development career. I started as a advisor at Children's National Medical Center in Washington, D.C. way back in 2011 and worked on their Children's Miracle Network team there. And then we moved to Austin in 2016. And the stars aligned for me to join the team at Dell Children's Foundation and continue working on our Children's Miracle Network program and develop and grow that. And I've really had the opportunity to grow here on this team and lead so many of our community-driven efforts, third-party partnerships, our signature event. Of course, we're going to talk today about Dell Children's Ball. So no shortage of juicy projects to work on. And it's been a pleasure. I'll celebrate my 7th year this year with Dell Children's Foundation.
Well, congratulations with that. And before we talk about, start talking about the event, I want to touch upon something you were just talking about. And that is that, you started your career in one city, you started in DC, and, you eventually moved to Austin. What's your advice on someone who may be active in fundraising, but they have to move to another city and they've got to get active all over again in a different community? Because what happens in Washington, D.C. and the personality of that city is obviously going to be very different than Austin, and really no two cities' personalities are alike.
It's so true. And it was a big change, coming from a really big major market, from a very established historic children's hospital that was founded during the Civil War, to come to Austin, which is just growing and thriving and building, right? I think the theme is growth. And Dell Children's was founded, just in 2007. We just celebrated our, 16th birthday. So such a much younger hospital with so much more growing to do, a much smaller team here in the foundation than what I came from in DC. And so sure, that brings challenges with it, but it also is just a different perspective to have. You get to have your hands in so many more things when you work on a smaller team. Everybody's got to pitch in on all the things. And I think it provides you an opportunity to learn even more and kind of get out of whatever little niche you might have been in before, and really build something. That's what I feel here mostly, is the impact of what we're doing. Just really feels like we're building something here and we're having a moment. And it's just something really special to be a part of. So yeah, I would say be open to, whatever those differences are, because I think so often those differences can really be opportunities.
Absolutely. And, in addition to that, it's the perspective. And I think when you come with a smaller and more nimble team, you're able to bring different perspectives insofar, like you said, with different hats. You really get the opportunity to take something from one event and apply it to another. And one thing we often talk about on this show is, there's no such thing as an original quote unquote event idea. It's basically you take elements from 50 other things and you create your own magical, unique experience, which is, I think the perfect segue to talk about, the recent gala and the fact that it was a record-breaking year by quite a bit of money. So it wasn't like,
That's right.
you broke the record by, $10,000. I mean, you really shattered it and really almost broke a glass ceiling that, allows the event to kind of go to new heights in the future. So, with that said, one of the things that I have always liked about your organization and the events that you do is how you all innovate. And I know that for years, and I've had the good fortune of going to this event for many years, it was the traditional, there would be a formal chair, along with maybe a committee or a council. And what
Right.
I noticed that you did, and you did this right before the pandemic, and I thought it was just such a clever idea you and your team came up with, was the 20 for 20 committee. So you kind of went away from an event with formal chairs to something where it's a wider committee, and you all have really seen a really good and substantial growth in the amount of money raised. Tell us
Yeah.
what inspired the change from a committee, from a formal chair to a committee, and how it's really benefited what you've done with the annual gala.
Absolutely. You're right. We were able to sneak in that 2020 event just before the pandemic hit. And that was the year that we changed to go to 20 for 2020. And previously it had always been just the two event chairs. And I think that we really, these are folks that have been involved in supporting Dell Children's for many, many years. And we felt like there were people who really wanted to have a leadership opportunity, and maybe they, without being chairs. And so it was like, well, why can't everybody take on that leadership opportunity? And why can't we widen this up, to really make it more inclusive? And I think the power of the collective is so much greater, right? The more, the better. When you're talking about raising funds, raising awareness, and getting engagement with what we're doing. We have so many new people pouring into our city all the time. And so what better opportunity to try to engage some of these folks and to widen that group of ambassadors that's really rallying around what we're doing. And we saw great success with that. And it's something that we've been able to continue. And I just think, like I said, the power of the collective, there's really something to be said for that.
Well, I love that. And one other thing, to tag upon that, and I'd like to get your thoughts on it, is having the wider committee also brings a wider and more diverse group of people to the event every year so that it's not
Absolutely.
necessarily the same old, same old. And that's why when you first said, I was like, gosh, what a brilliant strategy of, you're bringing all these people in. And I know that it's not going to be the same 20 people every single year. Some people may do it multiple years, but some people will do it one year. And it really creates this way to get people involved. Some people may come once and may not attend again, but other people get involved and they become, leaders in their own right within Dell Children's. And I just think it's so cool how you all have done that and done it so successfully in such a really quick period of time.
Well, thank you. I think it was just kind of the right moment to do it. And when we were able to, sneak in that 2020 event right before the pandemic hit, that was our most successful event to date at that time. And so we saw it really working. And so it's, just like you said, it's not always going to be the same group of people. And we kind of had that moment of the 20 for 2020 and moving forward, maybe it's 19, maybe it's 23. I think it's going to kind of fluctuate a little bit, and it does tend to be couples. But just opening that up to give everybody that leadership opportunity and really making those goals clear for everyone. This is a philanthropic effort, and the goal is to raise funds, and we want everybody singularly focused on that. And so, of course, with that comes, raising awareness and promoting what we're doing, as well as, like you said, casting a wider net in our engagement and gaining new supporters while we're at it. So we've really seen that work beautifully.
Absolutely. And that's wonderful. And I also love that you're not fixated on a number, because sometimes people will be like, well, if I do 20 for 20, I've got to do it, and it was a slogan at the right place, right time. Like you said, the stars align to shake things up, that,
Yes.
you don't want to have 20 couples if only 18 of them are really going to contribute, or 19 of them.
No,
It's
that's
okay
right.
to not necessarily meet to a full number and allow for it to be floating. And that, I think that's such a good way of looking at it. As you want, not necessarily, you want a broad range of people, but you also want the right people who are going to be good ambassadors for your organization.
Yes, it has to be the right people, and they've got to be in it for the right reasons. And we have really been so fortunate to have those rally around us.
And in speaking of rallying, this is kind of a good segue, and committees, and just in doing a broad and diverse group. And one thing that I like to talk about on this show, especially for people who may have more of a business background and they're getting into nonprofits for the first time, is nonprofits help other nonprofits. And it may be counterintuitive, especially if someone's got more of a business background with that. And with that being said, this year you all collaborated with the Zach Scott Theater Pre-Professional Company at your event. Tell us a
We
little
did.
bit about, and I saw the images of it, and it really looked really cool. And I've seen the Zach group perform before. But tell us the importance of how collaborating with other nonprofits really helped take that event up a level, and take your event
It's
up a
truly
level.
Absolutely. It really, that's well said, because it really did take everything up a notch. And how special for a children's hospital event to be singularly focused on the kids. And that's what that night was about. This was the second time we've had the opportunity to partner with the Zach Scott Theater. The first time there was actually going to be a performance involving one of our patients in Dell Children's Blood and Cancer Center. And unfortunately, that child ended up getting a little bit too sick to be a part of the
Mm.
performance. So the plan changed, and a group of their performers came and did it in her honor, which of course was beautiful. And I just think it's always a benefit to be able to partner with like-minded nonprofit organizations. And to your point, maybe for people who are thinking about it more of a little bit business background and things like that, I think it's really important to set the parameters of what that partnership is going to look like. Obviously, the night was focused and about raising money for Dell Children's, and everybody went into it knowing that. However, it was a benefit to the Zach Scott Theater too, because what a beautiful moment to highlight their performers and the work that they do, and the way that it crosses over with our patients, right? Some of their performers are Dell Children's patients, and so we really got to feature that, and the collaboration just ended up being so beautiful. You know, we had different people ushering people to their seats throughout the night, and coming in and doing their performances, and having everything be about and then from the children was just the perfect kind of ingredients for what we needed to create the spirit of what we wanted to feel in the room that night. And it came together absolutely beautifully. So we absolutely loved partnering with them. And I think that we got that resounding, enthusiastic feedback from our audience that everybody loved it as well. So we were thrilled with it.
Absolutely. And, I couldn't be happier because you're both great organizations. And to see two really good organizations like you all collaborate together, it warms my heart to see that. And just the broad impact, because it touches medical, it touches art, it touches a whole range of things that, that affect and impact children. And it allows for, those who are there to really see the holistic experience of children, and how Dell Children's is able to really create a platform for that.
Right. And so does the Zach Scott Theater, right? Create a platform for these children to really hone their skills. And we had a beautiful performance from one of our longtime Dell Children's patients who's been coached at Zach Scott Theater. Her name is Princess Gant, and she's now in college in New Jersey, and she's been on Broadway, and she's a superstar. And I think that her family would agree in hearing me say she wouldn't be where she is today without Dell Children's or without Zach Scott Theater. So what a beautiful way to highlight all of that work.
Absolutely. And, let's pivot a little bit on, talking a little bit about, the attendees and how you kind of changed the format post-COVID. And for those that may not be familiar with the organization, Dell Children's did a virtual event in 2021 and 2022 because of the Omicron rate. So you had the blessing and curse, I guess, at the same time of
Yes.
2 years where it didn't, the event didn't happen in person. And that, allows, when you kind of look back at that time and kind of, I don't want to call it the upside, but one of the unintended benefits that may have come out of COVID is when you have a couple of years to regroup, I've noticed that a lot of events, they're more willing to try different things now than they were 4 or 5 years ago. There's more risk that's willing to be taken. And with you all this year, what you did was, not only did you raise a record amount like we talked about at the top of the show, but you also did it in a more streamlined way with fewer attendees than previous years. Tell us a little bit about how you felt that created a better experience for everyone who attended, that allowed them to be more generous in their giving.
Absolutely. I think I mentioned as well that it's something we had been thinking about for a while and strategizing on how can we, really go for this and make it work. And to your point, I don't know how long it might have taken us to kind of really go for it if COVID hadn't happened, right? And those 2 virtual years hadn't happened. And, we were fortunate to continue to see the event raise, well over $1 million in those virtual years. And we were proud of that. But of course, that's not, exactly where we wanted this event to be. And we knew that we could go bigger than that. But also coming out of the event, I think, coming out of the pandemic, the word is intention. We really had to set that intention, have the right people in the room. And let's look at this, party that tends to be over 1,000 people over all these years. And then what is the percentage of those people in the room who really give? And how can we hone in on that and make sure that we've got, the right people in the room, and that we're also being inclusive and making sure we can bring new friends to the party and, widen our engagement and awareness in the community, but really hone in on what matters and raise them, just maximize the dollars raised at this thing. So we decided to commit to going from, like I said, historically, this had been about 1,000 person to a 900 person party. And we worked really diligently to keep that head count as close to 500 in 2023 as we possibly could. And we were there. We were right at 500. And that's what we planned out with our venue. The event took place in February of 2023. It sold out in November of 2022. And so with that comes challenges. You got to be committed to your plan and hold the line. And that can be hard when you're getting phone calls and people are checking in and not understanding maybe why these changes are being made. But we really, like I said, we held the line, and we were able to just have the most wonderful group in the room that night. And the next part of that strategy is really forming your program around the mission and being singularly mission focused. So I think with shrinking that headcount, we also just had to make sure, we kind of took away all the layers and took away all the fluff. We didn't have an auction. We didn't have a raffle. There was no live, no silent auction, no raffle, none of that. We did one singular ask, fund the vision that night in the room, and the people that were there rose to the occasion. And it was beautiful to see, this room of a smaller group than we've assembled in the past give bigger than ever. And of course, there was some pre-work that went into that with a little elevating our sponsorship levels as well, really elevating our title level, our presenting level, and tightening up, all of those benefit levels throughout the sponsorship packet. So all that pre-work is important, but when you get that moment in the room, like I said, of that singular ask, completely mission focused, just give for the kids because this is our children's hospital. It really resonated, and it was a beautiful moment to witness in the room that night.
So, for our guests, and I love how you pivoted from a traditional auction more to a fund division. Would you be able to elaborate for those, and one thing I love about Austin is Austin's so innovative that Austin's really the one city that's really perfected how to do a fund to need and a fund division. Would you be able to elaborate a little bit more on what that means and what that entails?
Sure. So kind of the difference between your traditional auction where you have all these exciting, fun, fancy packages that people are going to be able to walk away with at different levels. Fund division is just asking people to straight give. They're not getting anything in return. You can feel out where you want to start your levels. For us, we tried something new, which we had never started as high as $100,000 before, but that's what we did in 2023. And I believe we got 3 $100,000 gifts right out of the gate. So you kind of, you start up there at the top, whether that's 100,000, 50,000, whatever makes sense for your organization. And then you kind of go down from there. So we went 100, 50, 25, 10, all the way down to $500. And we had, our MC of the night really take us through that. We worked really hard to collaborate with our hospital leaders and clinicians to form impact statements around, what can $100,000 do at Dell Children's? What can $50,000 do? What difference does that make for the families that we're serving? And really paint that picture for people and ask them to give at those levels. And so, again, going back to just that mission focus. Nobody is getting anything in exchange for what they're giving that night. They're just giving out of the goodness of their hearts to support our children's hospital. And like I said, we saw the people in that room really rise to the occasion. We were a little nervous about our $100,000 start. Sometimes, you can kind of have a plan around that. And we didn't. We just threw it out there and went for it. And it worked. And it was beautiful to see. So, in addition to, like I said, kind of elevating those sponsorship levels, really, I think kind of just being brave and being bold and believing in your mission to go out there and make the ask at these different levels for that fund the vision is what made it all come together this year.
Well, that's incredible. I mean, and congratulations on getting 3 folks to do that because, it's rare to get 3 people to do the top level, regardless of whatever the top level is at any gala. So congratulations on that. I mean, that's really that's really, really
Thank
super
you.
impressive to, to
Thank
have
you.
that. So it,
I will mention, and I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I failed to mention one really important piece that we did have in place was a matching partner. So when you have that matching challenge, I think it can, it's a motivator. People respond to that. And we were fortunate to have $1 million match this year for the 2023 ball. When people know that their dollars are going to have double the impact and go even further, it works. And so that's a really nice strategy to be able to incorporate into your ask if you can have that in place.
absolutely. And a match just really allows people to basically double their dollar. So really they're giving $2 for every one when they do that. And, I just love how you explained so beautifully how, you know, each individual dollar level explained, a particular service that it funded. And the one thing I am seeing and noticing at galas in particular, when people give post-COVID, is people really do want to see more specifically how their dollars are being spent. And it's so much easier to do that with a fund division or a fund in need, as opposed to a live auction, because the live auction's a package. And yes, it goes to the organization, but there may not necessarily be as much of an emotional connection as there is when you
Right.
say these dollars will go towards this particular service.
Absolutely. And again, going back to making sure that you've got the right people around you in this moment for the right reasons. You have opportunities for our partners to fund things like feeding the whole entire hospital dinner on Christmas night, or making sure all the staff are going to have Thanksgiving meals on Thanksgiving Day. Funding end of cancer treatment parties for our patients in our blood and cancer center. These really, really tangible things that make a difference for our families. And at the end of the day, when you have the right people in the room, they want to be a part of that because it matters.
Absolutely. And, there were so many great things that happened in this evening. Would you be able to share what your favorite moment of the whole night was?
Gosh, the storytelling. I mean, aside from the fact that all of our vendors came together to just make the most beautiful space for us, it felt like we were in a fairy tale in that room. The storytelling. We with being so mission focused and knowing we weren't going to have an auction and we weren't going to have all these different layers flying around, everything was about the kids. So from the beautiful performances from Zach Scott Theater, we had fun DJs. It was important for us to make it fun too, right? This storytelling can be heavy and it can weigh on your heart and really pull on those heartstrings. So when we're bringing our community together, we want them to look forward to this night, and we had to really make it fun. And we had a lot of awesome DJs. We had fun disco ball entertainers running around. We made little private lounge areas for our top sponsors, so they had a space to kind of complement their seated table. That was different. And then everybody just got to sit back and listen to these patients. I will say, kind of a little takeaway from our storytelling is we may have told too many stories. I think we could have told less stories and maybe gone a little bit more in depth with them. But I think being so mission focused, we really went for it, and we told, I think, 5 different patient stories that night. And so 4 of them were told in a little bit of a shorter way. And then one of them was a much longer video where we really was kind of our biggest impact story. But seeing all of those kiddos come out with their families, and we actually had moments where each one of them reunited with their caregivers on stage.
Wow.
And it was powerful. It was just powerful. That's the only word that I can give for it. It was beautiful. So that was my favorite part, just seeing the genuine connection that our caregivers have with these families and sharing their stories of what they have become. That was our theme, becoming, and seeing, it was kind of like before and after stories. So where these kiddos started to where they are now. And it was incredible. It was an incredible night to be a part of.
That's amazing. And I even love, with the becoming, even with a lot of the fund division things you were talking about, like celebrating when, a child has gone through cancer treatments and all that,
Mhm.
you the organization took such good thought and such good care to make sure that that theme really resonated throughout the night in a whole myriad of ways. And I just think it's so awesome to kind of see just the care and the detail that you and your team were able to take in making that happen.
Thank you. Thank you. And I think it can be told from the perspective of each one of those patients and their families. And then it can be told from the perspective of the whole story and history of Dell Children's Medical Center across all these years since 2007 and what the hospital is becoming. It's a beautiful thing to see.
Absolutely. And there was one other thing that, I wanted to touch upon that you had said in your response. And that was, you had mentioned, I always think, and people get this misperception. If you raise $1 million or more in a night, the event was perfect. And, what I have found is that any top event, they'll find ways to improve to make the overall experience, even better the next year, and learn and build, because it's almost like building a house each year and you're building, upon that. And I really appreciate you saying that, if there, you wish that maybe you had streamlined the number of stories a little bit, from maybe 5 to maybe 3 or 4 to maybe, change or maximize the impact in a different way. And I love that, you bring the thought and you bring the care and you bring the detail into, yes, it was a magical night. Yes, we raised record amounts. And how am I going to take the whole of it and maybe pick out 2 or 3 things that, we can apply to a future year and make it, an even better and more magical evening.
Yeah, that's right. And I think it was us, like I said, kind of just being so committed to that mission focus. And so then we were off telling all these stories because there's so many to tell. And we wanted to feature different service lines across the hospital and diverse families and diverse diagnoses and all of these things because that's really important to us to be representative of our patient population and our caregivers. And so I think we can refine that a little bit and make it even more impactful because I think sometimes, of course, you can tell these stories a little bit on a surface level and you're going to reach some folks that way. But I think you can reach even more folks and pull on even more heartstrings if you can go a little deeper and really show the depth and breadth of some of these stories. And they're all so powerful in their own way. So working to really hone in on what is that story that we want to tell and what is that patient, what is that caregiver that's really going to bring that to life for us. So we do have that opportunity ahead of us for sure.
That's amazing. And, to piggyback on that, just one question. I know it's early, but, what's something you can tease about next year's ball?
What's something I can tease about next year's ball? Our 2024 Dell Children's Ball. I will say it's only going up from here. So that's a teaser for you, only going up from here. And something else that we're really excited about is our matching partner is going to be back with us in 2024. That commitment has already been made. We could not be more proud and honored to have their partnership, and we know how much that moves the needle. So, we hope everybody looks forward to knowing that, their donations will have that much more of an impact, and we have that matching partner in place for next year.
Well, I am already intrigued and cannot wait to be a part of next year's event. I mean, that's amazing. And it's good for people to know that the planning for the next year's event literally begins the day after the current year's gala.
You're not kidding. You're not kidding.
Maybe you can celebrate for 24 hours, but come Monday morning, you're back at it. And that's what allows the optimal growth and what allows, an organization to really thrive and really positively impact the community, any community. And, Dell Children's it embodies fun and fundraising in so many ways, and it embodies what we talk about positively impacting communities. So, I really appreciate you all taking the time, and I hope you all will come back next year, to talk about the 2024 gala.
I hope so too. This has been really such a pleasure, Rob. Thank you for having me, and thank you for your support. And thanks for everyone out there listening who has supported our mission as well. We couldn't do it without this wonderful community. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Megan, and congratulations again. And to learn more about how to support the Dell Children's Foundation and their annual ball held each winter, visit supportdellchildrens.org. And that will do it for this episode of Fun and Fundraising. I'm your host, Rob Giardinelli, reminding you to keep it fun, keep it interesting, and your guests will have a great time. Have a great day, everyone, and take care.